Good morning, Sarah. Good. Yeah. Madison. What is that? You have more? Can I have two? I'll just take one.
You can take all these. I'm not gonna eat all of them.
Thank you. Hello. Hello, Tiffany. Okay. What's up, Lay? I'm so sorry to hear that. So listen, we have to end class around 9:10, 9:15, maybe 9:30, maybe 9:45. I have to go to a funeral. What?
Sorry to hear that. Like I said, my condolences.
Yanning, are you well? Things are good? You get my text? I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. William, why are you sitting there?
I always push Chris.
Oh,
Like I told you, you don't know where he's gonna.
yeah. Yanning, when is the due date? Oh, congratulations. That's good. I left the office unlocked.
Yes.
So when people decide to leave, that knob just push it in and twist it so it remains locked from the outside. I have valuables in there, like pens and pencils. So, is there anything you guys want to talk about before we call on Leah? Yes, Leah.
Yesterday, my friends and I, we were having a conversation, and we were talking about crime, punishment, restorative justice, and so my question is evil purely structural? Like, is it the product of systems like capitalism, or like being poverty? Or is there still individual evil that exists beyond the social context?
Oh. Can you ask your question again? Maybe can you shorten it a little? Just like give me like an idiot's version.
Is evil the result of systems like capitalism or situations like poverty, or will evil continue to exist beyond those contexts? Like, are some people just evil?
You know, I wake up my son every morning around 3:30 before I leave for campus, and I force him to play piano. And it's mainly because I played music for many number of years. I sang, I played the santoor, the tumbak, sitar. And I've come to experience that there are moments in life where you are so broken, maybe you're just sad and depressed, or maybe you see an event that you can't express through language, and you sit and you sing it, or you play the piano or something. Every time I wake him up, and I force him to play the piano because I don't think he's exempt from the slings and arrows of life. I think at a certain point in his life he's going to be crushed. And I may be around, I may not be around, but the truth is, you can't reach anyone when they're in pain. I mean, you can give them some comfort, maybe give them a bowl of cereal, sit next to them, maybe even hug them, hold them, embrace them. But the truth is, they have to kind of wrestle with the event that lives outside as well as inside of them. So every morning when I wake him up, he says all these nasty things to me about me, that I am evil, I'm a horrible father, that he should have never been born, I should have never had sex with Louis. Not sex with Louis, I mean sex with my wife. And so he categorizes me as someone who just is uncaring and not so kind. I wonder if he'll change his mind 20 years from now, when maybe he has a girlfriend that will leave him, or maybe when he mourns the loss of the passing of his mother, or his father, or his sister, or maybe he'll be diagnosed with cancer. Who the hell knows what happens to people? And so he may come a crossroad where he comes to realize that no books can help him, no language can reach him, and so he'll just sit behind the piano. And while playing, maybe he'll think back some 20 years that yes, I had this guy for a father. He robbed me from rest and comfort, and he forced me to play the piano. I am so glad that he did. And all of a sudden, I am no longer in the category of someone being evil, but maybe someone who is saintly, who actually cared for him, liked him, you know. Hello. So our definition of evil changes. If you, for example, were to look at the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, something really interesting happens to the character of Judas. You don't see Judas as purely evil in the Gospel of Mark. He's just a guy who is just lost, confused. He's just not a very nice man. You know, by the time you get to the Gospel of John, he is just pure evil. And that's because whoever wrote these books, they began to add certain qualities to people that they didn't initially have. If you read, for example, one book, it says that Judas walked, his belly opened, and he just died, which is called the field of blood. In another book, same, the canonical Gospels, he hangs himself, you know. So, this idea of evil is somewhat questionable. There is this other aspect, which is there is something about us that enjoys aggression. I mean, I hate seeing blood. I hate seeing people fight. And yet, I am drawn to watching UFC once in a while. I am drawn to watching boxing. I don't like dead people. And yet, I gravitate towards calling the mortuary and seeing if they need help in washing a corpse or two. There is something about us that desires witnessing pure aggression and pure evil. It makes no sense, but it lives inside us. And part of it, I think, has to do with the fact as biological animals that if you want to survive, you really have to be mean at times. I mean, you have to be vicious. I don't know if you eat meat or not, But just go home and, go to Safeway and buy yourself like a living, quacking chicken. I don't know if Safeway sells those things, but just buy one or two, and put the chicken in the sink and cut off his head or her head and see what happens. And the truth is, you may want to, but you can't bring yourself to do it. There is something about you that refrains from that particular engagement. The other aspect, Leah, is I had a student in my class yesterday. My short-term class started. She comes in, she smells bad, and she looks bad, and she speaks bad. She looks at me and she says, "Why do you Middle Easterners come to America and steal our currency?" I have no idea what that means. Why do you open up like, I'm not Arab, by the way, but we are much better, we are much more advanced than the Arabs. Why do you guys open liquor stores and addict people to alcohol and drugs? I usually enjoy students, no matter how crude they may be. But maybe I'm just at a stage where there are just some things I can no longer tolerate. If you're 18, 19, 20, and you can't really be respectful physically, emotionally, verbally, to someone who's like 34 years older than you, there is really some serious components missing inside you. And I can't help you. I don't even want to help you. The fact is, I don't really want to be around you, so I just dropped it. So she's going to categorize me as evil, as I categorize her as someone who just no benefit to the class, or to me, or to herself, really, for the most part. I think if you want to survive in life, there are moments where you have to be extremely vicious and mean and aggressive. You and I have jobs, you and I deal with people, and there are instances where you encounter that there are certain people you just don't like, and there are in fact certain people that you pray for their deaths. Seriously, some politicians maybe, And so I think it's just part of who and what we are. Again, I don't really know exactly what you mean by evil. I'm just thinking as someone who transgresses in a way that's very intense and very mean-spirited, where you're able to kind of define them and look upon them as someone who has evil inside them. If you were to look at, say, the Gospel of Mark, for example, you have the story where some kid walks in and he has Satan inside him. And that's when Jesus, performs exorcism and Satan leaves him. Point that there are people out there, supposedly, maybe just a mythical story, that they have the power to drive out evil, and bring in spirits that are much more healthy for the human spirit. I don't know. Hello, Lovel. So, yeah, I think you should pick and choose to whom you want to be evil. Be very selective. It saves you time and energy and sanity. Going back to your question on Monday or Tuesday about forgiveness, I think one of the most difficult things about forgiveness is you get to a place where you have to forgive yourself for not wanting to forgive and not desiring to forgive. Coming to realize that this other person does not desire forgiveness. And there is this old school philosophy inside you that says, no, Leah, you're better than that. Forgive them. And the truth is no. And you have to kind of just bypass that particular aspect of you. It's okay to be mean. You have the right reasons for it. If someone has been there but has really never been there for you, and you've been feeling betrayed and abandoned most of your life, there is no reason to feel guilty for not being around them, taking care of them. Just walk away. Go regain your sanity and health And when you have enough richness about you, if you still want to go back and help them, help them. You know, one of the most important things is you have to understand when it's time to get rid of yourself as a sacrificial lamb. There are certain things you don't need to sacrifice anymore. It means like some people, they just don't need to read the Bible anymore. Just like they have taken a bite of that apple, whatever it may be, they have nuggets of wisdom inside them. They have the canon or the measurements where they can decide what right and wrong are. They just live their life the best they possibly can without resorting to God and the Bible and the rest of it. If that makes any sense. Yes. Yeah.
At what point should people let go of bridges?
To what?
Let go of bridges, like covering like resentment towards someone. There's people I know that hold bridges, and to me, it seems like they should let it go because it's very small to me. But it still hold very long lasting bridges.
You know, human relationships are complicated simply because when you spend time with someone, you create stories, and in many of those stories, there are expectations. You know, the truth is, you come to this class, if you want to look at me, have a relatively decent look on your face. So I'm not completely disgusted. Because the next time I come to class and I see that you just look at me in an indifferent, dismissal way, that there is just something off about you, I'm just never going to call on you. Am I holding a grudge? Absolutely. You know, as someone who's like 62, I expect some decency from people, as you should expect some decency from me. You know, so given that human relationships are very fragile, very complicated, and we are truly very much invested in people. I mean, I love my kids, but should they cross certain lines, I hold a grudge. I mean, sure, at a certain point, like many of you in this class, do I say, I am better than this, get over it? Yeah. Am I successful? Sometimes. But oftentimes, it's just tough love, you know. The other thing is, you have no idea what people expect of one another. You know, if, for example, I'm married to EJ, forgive me, EJ, and you happen to be our daughter, you may not truly understand the complications that live inside EJ and I's relationship. You know, we've been married for like 5, 6, 9, 10, 20 years. And a lot of things happen in relationships. I mean, time really damages people in so many different ways. You know, imagine for a moment that I give so much attention to EJ when we first met, and I continue to do so. And then all of a sudden, he gets pregnant, and he has you. I mean, we're talking about like Arnold Schwarzenegger and that movie where he got pregnant, right? So he has you. And yeah, EJ, congratulations. And from that point on, I begin to notice that, you know, he pays less attention to me. The way he cooks is less than pleasant to my palate. You know, he doesn't text me, doesn't call me. And then you come out, you know, how you doing? Take care of this kid. Well, I just asked how you, and all of a sudden you realize, you know, first, his attention is elsewhere. Second, I have certain needs. I'm not talking about like physical needs, emotional needs. I want to like look at him, have a chat with him. But every time him and I sit and talk, you come up. I don't want to talk about you. You're like 2 days old. I don't give a shit about you. You know? And so every time, you know, there's this beautiful story about Sigmund Freud when he was very, very young. He had a brother named Michael. If, you know, the literature I read was accurate in describing his life story, that, you know, Freud was, the first child, and, you know, first kids are really, really special, and Louis will tell you that. Louis, right? He'll tell you that. I mean, first of all, it'd be a crime if he was to be satisfied with only having one child. You need at least two. At least. I mean, if more come up, well, it's mostly accident, but that's okay. But you need at least two because, you need to give a life companion to your child, a brother or sister, because you as a parent, eventually you'll die. And they just need a buddy throughout their life, just in case there's pain and excitement, they can share those things with someone. So the first child gets 110% of their parents' attention. I mean, that's amazing. It's like you're the sun and your parents are the planets revolving around you 24/7. And if you've seen the movie Baby Boss, have any of you seen the movie? You haven't seen the movie Baby Boss? Is it Boss Baby? Yeah, have you seen that? Well, I've seen Baby Boss. And so Boss Baby, they come to the kid and say, well, what do you think about having a brother or a sister? He says, yuck. I hate children, even though he himself is a kid. Now, the thing is, I think inside this kid's head is, if I was to have another brother and sister, and this happens unconsciously, that, let me think about this. For the past 2 years, every time I cry, I scream, I fall, my parents run to me. Which means that if I had a brother or a sister, every time he was or she was to fall and scream, they would run to him or her. And what about me? I would feel like lonely and abandoned and betrayed. And so when his brother Michael was born, talk about evil and viciousness. His parents are Jewish. To some extent, he himself is Jewish. He raised his kids as Jewish. He sits and prays. And you know what he prays for? The death of his brother. And lo and behold, a few years later, his brother dies. Something that Freud said that he never forgave himself for doing, praying for his brother's death. And I think that's what happens in all relationships. That something comes in, attention is stolen, focus is diverted elsewhere, and you kind of feel a little off. And the other thing is, you just wake up in a pissy mood. And your companion can look at you in a certain way, and you are going to interpret that look in a completely, mean way, and then you hold a grudge. You say a couple of things. It's like this morning, my wife. So, funerals are funny things because first you grieve the loss of someone very close to you. And it's heart-wrenching and it's tough. And then all of a sudden it becomes a business, What sort of a coffin or a casket? Should it have air conditioning? Should it have YouTube? Do you want a flat screen TV in the casket? Do you want to bury the body way up there where no one can see it, or down there, and the cost difference is like $50,000, $60,000. And so I ask her, when did this thing become a show? It's no longer about the grieving process. To some extent, I understand that it brings about closure, but the emotions are now directed towards something very, very different. I want to now make food for people I never see, never really care for. I need to make sure the chairs are a certain way. I gotta go to Costco and buy food for people, again, I don't see, I don't care for. And the truth is, all I want to do is just sit by this corpse, maybe shed a couple of tears, give some prayers to God if there is one up there somewhere, and just walk home alone, hopefully in some reflective mood. And that's it, So I begin to kind of talk to her about this stuff, and she says, I don't want to talk about this right now. So that's fine. And I said, well, if this is not what you want to talk about, well, there is nothing more I want to talk to you about, because this is the only thing that interests me. And then I just hang up the phone. And then she calls me 50 times, and I don't pick up. Am I holding a grudge? Absolutely. Maybe she's holding a grudge. But the point I'm trying to make is just things are complicated. Emotions are involved, expectations are involved, history is involved. It's just too many things. Go ahead.
Grudges are so bad that it breaks up family, or like breaks up relationships that have been precious for such a long time. And it's one thing really different.
All relationships have cracks in it. And I'm not talking about the first 2-3 weeks where you're romancing your partner. As time passes and as this particular emotion dims a little, cracks begin to appear. And cracks begin to appear because all of a sudden you realize that there are certain parts of your companion that are not lovable. You don't care for them. You don't want those qualities to be around you. And then if you have children, those cracks usually get covered by attending to your kids and not talking about the cracks. If, for example, let's say I'm an instructor, my wife is an instructor, so when we go home, we don't really talk about the cracks existing in our life. We talk about, so how was the student? What did you talk about? Oh, you talked about the Epic of Gilgamesh. So what exactly did you say about the epic? And all of a sudden you realize, instead of talking about the cracks, you spent 5 hours talking about an epic that took place 5,000 years ago. Or you talk about Donald Trump, or politics, or ICE being in the Bay Area. And so you realize a good amount of gossip, in fact, helps in you being distracted from some serious stuff that exists in the relationship. And by the time you get to be 50, 60, 70, 80, you're too old, you have dementia, you're just too fragile to walk away. Unless you happen to experience something that Pavarotti experienced, which was, he's like this 56-year-old guy, he's been married for 20, 30, 40 years. This 30-year-old shows him a good amount of interest. And he leaves his wife. Sometimes when there are serious cracks in any relationship, whether platonic or otherwise, it doesn't take very much for someone to walk into that particular space and destroy whatever you have built with a certain person. The other aspect of it is there was a time where we actually took our marriage vows seriously, and the culture, in fact, encouraged us to take them seriously. Divorce was demonized in culture and society. If, for example, and women had the most difficult aspect of it, because as a divorcee, a woman would be categorized as a whore in this culture and many other cultures. If you were a divorcee, no one would ever marry you, especially if you had children. And for the longest time, if you were to divorce your husband as a woman, you would not be getting your children, the man would. Okay. Now, so there were, and family ties were very, very tight. There was your mother, there was your grandparents, there was a father, and the in-laws, and everybody came in making sure that the two of you stayed together, not because you had a great relationship, but because your kid's future is at stake. And you didn't need Sigmund Freud. The culture just told you, listen, the kids will suffer should you divorce. We don't want a divorce. Add to the fact that you have a name and reputation in our community. The next time you come to a gathering and people know that you're a divorcee or a divorced person, they're not going to want to sit next to you. Once you lose those particular super glues in a culture, then the concept of divorce is not going to be as hefty or as costly, psychologically speaking, on people. Now, the other aspect is we are no longer family-oriented people. We are no longer kid-oriented people. Consider before the 30s or 40s, and being very, very generous, where women had a specific role to play in life. As a woman, you have only one job: to get married, to get pregnant, to raise a family. That's your only job, your entire focus. And then of course you have the feminist movement, you have people like Simone de Beauvoir and the rest of them, Emma Goldman, who come forth and say, you should be authentic, you should do this, you should do that, you should be an anarchist, go against the grain. But your entire focus as a woman was to make sure that you have relatively decent kids. And when you would go home from school, as a kid, your mom would always be there. Food would always be ready. I'm not saying, it was a good position for women, but the point I'm trying to make is at a certain point, you had another idea, another way of being a woman, that you could be a CEO, you could be a professional, you could be a wife, you could be a daughter, you could be a sister, you could also be a mom. And the truth is, it's just too many things on the plate. Something has to give. And I think Henry David Thoreau, who was one of the students of the Transcendentalist movement, also a founder, he had always argued that whenever something new enters life, when you have one new thing entering life, you lose 50 things. If I'm really, really good friends with you, and you and I have been friends for the past 10 years, if I lose your friendship, I'm just not losing you as a physical entity. I'm losing 10 years of history. And those 10 years will no longer be contained in a physical body. I can no longer see you. I can no longer speak to you. I can no longer hear you. And that's devastating. It is true, I've moved on from you. I'm now with EJ. But the point is, for me to create that relationship with EJ that I have with you, it's going to require me another 20 years. I'm a bit older now, a bit more stubborn now, a bit more stingy now with time and energy. So the 10 year I spent with you, lots of free time. That's going to take me 50 years with him. And so is it true that women have a voice now? Yeah. Is it great? It's great. It's beautiful. Is it true that we have people like Angela Davis and Simone de Beauvoir and the rest of them? Definitely. Is it also true that it has to some extent devastated family life? Yeah. Is capitalism great? Are you kidding? Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, where do you go to find Costco's? You just go to one place and you can find 50,000 different items. It's great. Life is easier. Life is simpler. But is it also true that capitalism has a tendency of looking at you as an object, that there's a price tag? Is it true that every person who walks into this class is looked upon as an object? I mean, did you know that the district gets paid about $4,000 to $7,000 for every single head that lives in this classroom? It's not even about education anymore. It's about, are you making the district money? So to everything, there is a negative and a positive. Here's what I suggest. For those of you in this class who hold some grudges and maybe some of you in this class don't like your parents as much, my recommendation is the following. Get married. Have kids. And see what marriage and what the responsibilities required in a marriage and what children and what they require to be raised relatively healthily. Just see what they do to you. And I will tell you, you will be broken day after day after day after day. And if you don't know how to compromise, it will be devastating. Now, you will only compromise if you're poor. If I don't have any money, if you want to give me one piece of candy, I just have to accept. If on the other hand, my pocket is filled with money, I expect more. You're talking about America, abundance. If you're my girlfriend, I don't like you, I'm just going to go out with EJ. If EJ doesn't work out for me, I'm going to go out with Emmy. If Emmy doesn't work out for me, I'm going to go out with Leah. There are no shortage of people. And so what you're talking about is you're now living in a culture, the elements of shame, embarrassment, completely gone. That your name, reputation doesn't really mean anything to you because you don't really respect anyone, you don't fear anyone. People's opinions and judgments about you don't really mean anything to you. So you can just do whatever. So the point I'm trying to make is when you see two people divorcing or two people having a conflict, you have to look at not only the psychological aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it, the philosophical aspect, the religious aspect of it, also the social and political aspect of it, because they're all connected. EJ.
Yes.
Go ahead. Since you and I are married.
I was thinking this morning about sentimentality. For example, I drove my grandfather's car here. He passed away a little while ago. And there was a little plush zebra in the back. I got no idea what that was about, but it made me emotional. It made me think like that's probably got a story somewhere that now nobody ever knows. What's up with that? What's the purpose of sentimentality? Well, I don't have any actual connection to the object.
So there are a couple of things. First and foremost, we are the sort of animals that feels first and then thinks. We are extremely feeling animals, intensely so. And we feel because, unlike most of the animals out there, we have very complex set of needs. And they can only be satisfied by and through other people. Third, we have this huge brain that stores a lot of information, stores a lot of experiences. And those information and experiences hold a lot of feelings and emotions in them. And all of us in this class have trigger points. All of us do. You know. There is a book by Albert Camus, the Algerian philosopher, named, what's the title of the book? The Stranger. Just to So, Camus is a 20th century philosopher. He had seen what France had done to Algeria, what it means to be exploited, to be brutalized by a culture or a country that's far superior than, Algeria was. There is this character in his novel whose name is Mousseau. And there are two Mousseaus. The first Mousseau is the guy who doesn't feel anything. And he doesn't feel anything because there is no self. And there is no self because there are no attachments. And there are no attachments because there are no histories that have been made by interacting with another human being. So when he gets his telegram that mother died, well, she says, well, my mother was in a nursing home. I haven't seen her for like 5-6 years. This telegram, it doesn't have a date. Does that mean that mother died yesterday or this morning, a couple of weeks ago? Well, she died anyways. I hadn't seen her, so what? People died. So what you have is a human being who did not really create much of a relationship with his mother. And so when you don't create a relationship, when you don't spend time, when you don't invest energy, when you don't see a future with this particular person, well, there is no relatability. No emotions or feelings are generated. It doesn't mean that if you come to the ceremony today with me, at this funeral service, that you won't cry. Other people will push tears out of you, even if you can say, I'm a man, as a man I've been told never to cry. You will weep a little. Okay? Have you seen that movie, Terminator 2, with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Near the end of the movie, he says, I need to just kill myself, because I have this chip in my brain. And this is what Terminator says. And as long as this chip is there, if other people can access it, then they can make robots like me even more powerful. So he melts himself. As he is melting, or as he's about to go and commit suicide, John, which is this little kid, and if you see throughout the movie, initially he doesn't like the robot, but coming to realize how much the robot has done for him and his mother, he creates this relationship. Even though this robot can't feel, he's very rational. He's like Mr. Spock in Star Trek, okay, or Data. And so what happens is, at a certain point, he sees that John is tearing up, and a few drops are dropping. And so he puts his thumb on his cheek and he says, now I understand why you cry. Even though Terminator himself does not cry, he does understand the reason why the tears are there. What you don't have in the novel, Mousseau, is that there is no self that's attached to anything or anyone. He lives in an island all by himself. He doesn't have any emotions. The second version of Mousseau that comes up in the novel much later is a priest going in there and him being in the courtroom and seeing the gaze of other people. And the transcript is read back to him, you know. I mean, it's interesting throughout the book. You know, Mary, his girlfriend, goes to him and says, let's get married. He says, marriage, ha! Well, if you want to get married, fine. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. You know, they're out of their apartment, and this guy, this Arab guy, or no, not Arab, it's a pimp, who has a dog on a leash, and it's very, very tight. The good dog is choking. And Mary looks at him and says, can you call the cops? I mean, look at the poor dog. He says, dogs, ha! What they do? Nothing. I don't like cops anyways. You know, so this is a guy who really can't have any relationship with anyone because he doesn't know how to feel anything. Okay. At the end of the book, you realize that this is a guy in chaos, conflict, because now for the first time in his life, he knows how to feel. He feels bad for the way he looked at his mom, the way he treated his mom. He feels bad about the guy that he killed. He feels bad about his girlfriend, Marie. He feels bad about, at the very beginning of the book, going to the funeral. Instead of looking at people and be feeling bad about himself and the absence of relationship with his mother, he orders a coffee latte. He says, that's what I want. I'm not, you know, and he's belligerent. And he goes there to like pick up chicks. That's what he wants to do, really. Maybe I'll go there and find a companion. So we are born to be sentimental. Your task is to, I suppose, to discriminate. To whom, for what, when, that's all. But there is another thing, you know, EJ, that zebra you looked at, which made you feel, you know what feelings do? They allow you to feel your own existence. I exist. And you lose control. You know, for the first time, all the information, all the pursuits, all the purpose you had in life, they all disappear. They really just bring you to the moment. It could be negative or positive, but that's the task of emotions. And then, you know, you have regrets. You know, I should have known my grandfather a bit better. You know, his last days, he asked me to go hang out with him, but I said, no, I want to go to a bar and drink. And then, you know, you feel really shitty about yourself. And then, you know, given the fact that you're such clumsy little rats, 2 minutes later, you forget the whole thing. And Lay. That's what you want to tell me? At 10 o'clock. Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. You know, I've said my goodbyes. The rest of it is just a show. Yeah.
Do restorative justice movements overestimate human empathy? Like, they assume everyone wants to be restored. Do they underestimate our capacity for malice?
For malice, you said? Leah, I don't know if I understand your question well, but let me just create a ridiculous analogy and you tell me, okay? You're 18. Imagine I'm 18. And imagine you and I are attracted to one another. And we go out and you see me drinking alcohol. But, attraction is a feeling. It's a set of emotions. And even though rationally, your reason tells you, this guy's a drunk. Why the hell would you want to hang out with him? Your emotions kind of dismiss your reasoning abilities. And so you further pursue this relationship. You don't drink. You don't like people who drink. You've introduced me to your parents, and I was sober when I met them. But you want to make sure that I don't see them being intoxicated. Will you read the Bible to me? Are you hopeful that because, again, you have these intense emotions and feelings for me, that there are ways that you could help me? I mean, that's what hope is, really. Hope exists in the future, assuming that tomorrow will be better than today, that tomorrow you'll have tools you didn't have today. That's what hope is. Hope is not about the past. Hope is always about the future. Now, you are young, and you don't really have very much life experience. What you have is a lot of feelings, and what you have is a lot of thoughts, and what you have is a relative amount of reflection about your feelings and thoughts. And that's all you have. And you may have certain experiences that cause you a great amount of pain, but being so young and not having the proper tools, I doubt very much you have the ability or the tools to remove the pain and correct the history that you assume that have wronged you. I am your boyfriend now. I'm a drunk. But you and I have sat many hours while I was sober. We talked about marriage and having children, buying a house, moving away from Oakland and going to Richmond. Right, that's a worse place. Montclair, how's that? Okay. Will you read me the Bible? Will you come to me to the AA center? Will we go hiking? My question to you ultimately is, at what point will you lose hope and give up? At what point will you abandon me? For all the right reasons, of course. Is it when you're 25? Your hair is gray now? You have wrinkles now? You dropped out of school to take care of me? Your parents have disowned you because they kept telling you to get rid of me, but you didn't because supposedly you loved me? At what stage are you going to leave me? When you're 25, 35, 45? Is that when you have lost hope? When will you come to realize I have no ability to be fixed? When will you realize that if I want to be fixed, it has to first of all come from me, not from you? Even if it was to come from me, I would know how to overcome addiction. So, in Norway, they have this program. I don't know how these people work. It's an amazing program. Their prison system, some of them are very, very interesting. So, let's say you have this camp that has about 25, 30 houses. Each house has about 4 bedrooms and is fully loaded. They have a great kitchen, great appliances, knives, machetes, TVs, showers, everything. About 50, 60 people live in those houses. Their crimes? They all murdered someone. But they're not locked up. I don't know why. They have a great amount of anger and malice inside them, but they're not locked up. What they do really is someone interviews them. And then they put the appropriate people with the right temperaments in a house. They begin to share a house, 4 of them. And then they begin to cook together, watch TV together. And after they're examined and they're found worthy, they're released into society. It's not like here. You're relatively sane, you get pulled over for having marijuana a few years ago, right, in your pocket, and it's your 3rd offense. Now you have like 20 years in prison. You're a good kid, but now you come out as a savage. Because that's what the prison system does to you. Not in Norway. in some ways, I think it really is the culture and the cultural narratives that create this perspective in us. If people have the capacity to learn, if people have the capacity to change, you know, I don't think the American culture gives us that particular narrative. I mean, when you have a stock market that revolves around prison beds, when you realize that ICE is working with private companies, and those companies have beds, and each bed that is occupied is a few more dollars to these companies, and then when you realize those commandments are coming from high top like the White House, you kind of sit back and wonder, what the fuck is going on? I thought it's just about locking up criminals, but now you realize it's just about money. Are you telling me that you're just going to take people off the street, put them in a camp on some prison because some douchebag wants to make a few bucks? And the answer is yes. And if there was anyone who had any hope in fixing the system, a few more stories like that, you just give up, you walk home. Why would you want to participate or be engaged in anything? It's just too big. You know, I can deal with the fact that maybe when you and I go out, or you can deal with the fact that I only drink maybe 2 bottles of beer. And I'm tipsy. And I don't want to drink more than 2. That you can deal with. But if you and I go out and I'm drinking like 50 bottles, and I'm puking left and right and being abusive, how the hell do you deal with that? Having said all that nonsense, with your permission, I must leave. It's good to see all of you. Have a nice weekend. For those of you who are free, I have left my office door open. Just go to the 4th floor. There are tea, coffee, cookies, and cake. Help yourself. My only request is that when you leave, make sure the door is locked from the outside, that no one can get in. Okay? Thank you. Yeah. 402.